If you have ongoing exposure to controlling people, it's a virtual certainty that you're going to experience blurry boundaries, which is why I've created the extensive online course called This Is Me, Establishing Boundaries with the Controllers in Your Life. There's a link below that will give you all of the details, and I hope that you would find it therapeutic. One of the defining features of narcissism is the ability to create a false positive persona, at least for a while. You've heard me use terms like the false self or alternate reality. Narcissists are able to go into that false portrayal of who they are, and they can make you at least presume for a while that maybe they're nice people. Now, sometimes you have that overt narcissist who's so brash and loud and overt and large and in charge that they don't leave a whole lot of room for the imagination. Many times, though, you have narcissists who are of a more covert variety who can, and part of their shtick, if you will, is to create this impression that says, oh yeah, I'm a trustworthy person, I'm going to be one of your nicest allies. And they can give you that false persona, like I say, for a while. But eventually you begin realizing there's so much more going on beneath the surface that they don't tell you about right up front. And if you don't go along with the program, then here comes a very strong mean streak. And I know that many of you have been up against this, whether it's the person you're living with or someone that you've worked with or in your extended family, social circles. That meanness, that harshness can eventually come out because they can't keep up that mask forever. Eventually, the narcissism is going to show itself for what it is, and it's not going to be good. Now, there are numerous emotions that narcissists struggle with beneath the surface. We can say they struggle with a lot of insecurity, and a lot of fear and anger. The emotion, though, that takes them into that mean streak is the emotion of vengeance. There can be such a strong need that says, I have to retaliate. I have to make you pay if you don't go along with me, that emotion can surge so strongly in them that it carries them in such a way where it's not going to be very pretty for you at all. So their attitude, their emotion of vengeance is the number one emotion that drives that mean streak. And I want to break down the whole definition of narcissism and show you how they're actually set up from the inside out to be this vengeful kind of person. Let me give you an idea of what I'm talking about. You know that narcissists have a lack of empathy. In their lack of empathy, it allows them to dehumanize you. Now, again, when they have that false self, they don't let you see it right up front. But all the while, it's like, I don't really care about who you are and what you feel and what your needs are. And that lack of empathy inhibits them from seeing you as being a person with real needs and feelings. That's just dismissed straight up front. You are dehumanized, and it eventually shows up. Or their need for control. That's another major feature of narcissism. Leads them to automatically think of you as being a subordinate. If they're in control, that means you're the one that needs to be controlled, and you're supposed to come under their tutelage, if you will, or under their mandates. And so they already bring that kind of mindset to the equation, which of course sets them up for very spiteful and vengeful reactions to you if you don't go along. Or you know that narcissism is defined by a belief in their own sense of superiority. And that being the case, it already sets them up to have a condescending attitude toward you. Going into the place of disdain is not at all a difficult task for them. They're just a couple of steps away from that constantly because of that superiority attitude. Or their fear of your independence can result in them criticizing you and trying to fit you back into the mold, forcing their agenda upon you. And so they can have this strong imperative mindset that eventually is going to come out in full force. Their chronic defensiveness. will create a natural distrust toward you, and then that distrust will cause them to have accusations, and so that sets them up. They have that gurgling on the inside of them despite the false persona. They have a willingness to exploit you, which causes it illustrates that they see you only in terms of your utility, and again, that will eventually come out. They have a natural proclivity toward keeping secrets, which automatically puts them in an adversarial relationship toward you. It's like, I don't want you to know what's going on over here. Stay out of here. And it creates a you versus me mentality that's going on, and you may not even be aware of it in the moment. They're very self-impressed, and that prompts them to disregard you because you're not me. And as a result, that's sitting on the inside of them. They crave admiration to such an extent that they don't want you to have any kind of admiration. And so they suck all the positive air out of the room because they want it all for themselves. And love and honor toward you is missing. So when you look at the entirety of what narcissism is, you can see that it sets them up naturally, I was going to say perfectly, naturally towards this vengeful attitude and toward this vengeful emotion, because eventually you're going to come along and say, this isn't working for me. And I don't like this, but in their narcissism, it's like, no, you're supposed to defer to me. And then when they sense that you don't, then here comes the vengeance. And I'm hoping you can see that these ingredients are so deeply embedded in them, and the proclivity toward vengeance is so much of a natural byproduct of the whole narcissistic pattern that I'm hoping that it's not going to catch you off guard in the sense that they're going to try to make it all about you. I'm hoping you can see, no, this is something that they are struggling with internally. You happen to be a player on the stage, but this is all about who they are. Now, notice that once they go into that mean, vengeful kind of mindset, they're going to be all the very familiar patterns of communicating toward you. For example, they're going to be very critical toward you. You'll never feel like you can measure up. They're going to have an attitude of entitlement, like, you owe me. Why haven't you done what I tell you to do? You'll be on the receiving end of plenty of anger, and despite that initial friendly surge that they may have, and like, you can trust me. No, anger's laying underneath the surface, and you'll eventually see that, and boy, will you see it, and it's going to be ugly. Their message toward you in their meanness and in their vengeance is going to be something to the effect of, you're nothing but a menace. You can be replaced, and if you don't do what I want you to do, I'm just going to make it that much more miserable for you. You're going to be the object of their scorn. They can run smear campaigns against you. Favors can be withheld. It's awful. It's so important for you to know what you're dealing with, because I know that many of you have been on the receiving end of much of that narcissist attitude and emotion of vengeance and the meanness that goes along with it. And you can be wondering, what did I do? And the answer is, you showed up, that you're just in their life. Because if it's not about you, if it's not you, it's going to be someone else. It's about who they are. So make sure that you understand that this predisposition is going to be there, and they're going to carry it regardless of who's in front of you. And that's so important for you to recognize. Once you're on their bad list, you're not going to get off of it. And there's, I'm hoping you can see the reason you can't get off of it. It illustrates that these narcissistic individuals are so bound by the ingredients that I just mentioned and by the natural outpouring of those ingredients that they're actually stuck in a rut of their own making. And so you're never going to win. You're never going to convince them that they have some issues, and the only way that they're going to be able to change is for them to come to terms from the inside out that this is not working for them. Every now and then, one of them might slow down and say, hey, wait a minute, I've got to take a hard look at myself. A very high percentage of them do not. And so this illustrates that you're going to need to have your own individuation. You need to come to terms with who you're going to be separate and distinct, knowing that you're never going to get their approval. You're not going to be able to harmonize with them, and you need to establish boundaries. When we talk about boundaries, define yourself from the inside out, and then live into your definition of who you're going to be. And then when that narcissist with all their meanness and their vengeance comes at you, rather than thinking, I got to get you to stop doing that. No, in your boundaries, it's like, I know that that's where you are. That's why I'm having to live very separately. And so you set your priorities, you establish stipulations and consequences about what you will and will not participate in. And then over the long haul, you have to come to terms with the question, is this somebody that I even need to have any kind of exposure to? Interestingly, as a therapist, whenever people would come into my office with emotional dysregulation, I would begin with a mindset that would say, we can sort through these responses. But once vengeance has taken over, I would find repeatedly in working with individuals, it's like when they're in that place of vengeance, the dark side has taken over. They've gone over that line and they've crossed over. And basically, they can't handle your humanity because they've never learned to come to terms with their own humanity. They're still hiding behind that alternate reality of theirs. They're still hiding behind their false self. And so when they come at you with their meanness and the vengeance that goes along with it, I'm hoping you can determine, I am not going to be your doormat. I'm so sorry that you struggle as you do. But you see, that's not my problem to solve. That's something that's on you. And if you keep wanting to make me responsible for you, I see straight through that. No, thank you. I'm not going to participate in that. Now, I hope that videos such as this can give you some more insight and awareness regarding what you're dealing with. These are very difficult people, and you're going to need to have a much heightened sense of awareness and knowledge. Knowledge is power, and I'm hoping that you can power through this, and so you can be the best version of yourself. If you've not hit the subscribe button, I would encourage you to do so. Hit that like button that goes along with it. I know many of you have thought to yourself you could use some help sifting through this, and I'm so pleased to be sponsored by the people at BetterHelp.com. It's an online therapy source, and obviously I'm a therapist. I'm retired now from my therapy practice, but I've been referring people to therapy literally my entire adult life, and I'm pleased that we have that resource if you have a need for online therapy, which is very popular, and it's affordable as well. Go through our link that we have below, and there's a whole team waiting to assist you there. In addition, I have my therapeutic classes. It's like signing up for a course online. It's about, I have Ready, Set, Connect about connection skills. This is me about boundaries, Free to Be about us finding yourself despite the controllers. Each class, each course has its own set of videos and documents that go along with it with guided questions. We also have my website with tons of articles. We have my podcast now, and we have my books and other resources. So please avail yourself to all of that. Narcissists have that false front. They try to give you the impression that they're somebody that they're not. When you don't measure up, here comes the meanness, and it's driven by that emotion of vengeance. I hope that you can see what you're dealing with, because in doing so, it can prompt you to say, I need to be my best version of myself separate from all of that. Because ultimately, I'm hoping that you're going to be committed to being a person of steadiness, dignity, respect, and civility, like we talk about here on Team Healthy. And then your position then to be a person of peace.